The mid-2000s were a time when gaming was exploring new frontiers, and developers began creating experiences that were as unique as they were immersive. Among these innovations was Trauma Center: Under the Knife, a title that turned the Nintendo DS touchscreen into an operating table and put players into the role of a life-saving surgeon. Released in 2005, Trauma Center combined fast-paced medical procedures with dramatic storytelling, challenging players to master a variety of tools and techniques while navigating the intense pressures of the operating room. From treating injuries to battling fictional diseases like guilt, it wasn't just a game, it was an adrenaline-pumping test of skill, precision, and decision-making. Today, we're diving into the history of the entire Trauma Center series, exploring its innovative gameplay, gripping narrative, and how the series carved out a unique niche in gaming. So scrub in, steady your hands, and join us for today's high-stakes trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 251st. Yes, we are on the other side of 250. It's our 251st episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people who have created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies that bring it all together, making our hobby video games a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we're scrubbing in for an anniversary of Trauma Center: Under the Knife, the 2005 Nintendo DS classic that turned players into virtual surgeons. Combining tense, time-sensitive gameplay with a dramatic storyline, it redefines what could be done with the DS's touchscreen. And in celebration of its anniversary, I've decided we're actually going to look at the whole Trauma Center series. So I ran an audible. I was like, when else are we going to have a chance to talk about Trauma Center? Let's do all of them. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who'd probably drop the scalpel and call it a bold strategy. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, do you think you'd save the patient, or would your surgery skills send them straight to malpractice court?
Well, Dave, I would see their family in court, but I don't think they'd be there.
That's a fact. That is absolutely a fact. And also today we are joined by a special guest who once tried to perform surgery using only a stylus and a pizza cutter. It did not go well. Welcome to the operating room. Returning guest for, what is this, 8, 9? I can't remember, but you know, Ryan Shepard. Ryan, how many times is it now?
I believe this is 7 or 8. I've lost track.
I think it's 8.
Yep.
So, Ryan, if you were actually handed a scalpel in real life, do you think you'd save a patient or just kind of scrape along the operating table like doodling?
Well, I have to say, if it was, in the shape of, about the length of a DS stylus, I have a high degree of confidence. No skills, but confidence.
So you're saying, and Rob, you might agree with this. So you're both saying that your experience with Trauma Center may give you too much confidence in an actual operating room?
No.
No, you don't think you could do this in real life?
I mean, I can cut someone open, but putting them back together, that's a different story.
This game made me sign up for medical school.
Did it? This game did. This game was fantastic. We all had this one. All right, well, we are covering the whole Trauma Center series. We got a lot to cover today as a result. But before we get there, Rob, why don't you share with our audience what else happened during this week in gaming history?
Well, kicking it off on June 16th, 1986, Bubble Bobble was released in arcades by Taito, introducing players to the charming duo of Bub and Bob.
You get it?
Bub and Bob, Bubble Bobble?
Yeah.
Bubble Bubble Bubble. Bub and Bob are two bubble-blowing dragons on a quest to rescue their kidnapped girlfriends from the villainous Baron von Blubba. Yep, Baron von Blubba. The game's unique mechanics had players trapping enemies in bubbles and then popping them to clear each level, all while navigating vibrant, single-screen stages. With a cheerful aesthetic, catchy looping soundtrack, and tight co-op gameplay, Bubble Bobble quickly became an arcade sensation. It also stood out for its multiple endings and hidden secrets, encouraging players to keep coming back for more. Its success led to numerous sequels, spin offs, and adaptations across various platforms, making it a staple of the video game industry and a nostalgic favorite for many players.
Ryan, you a Bubble Bobble fan?
I am an old school Bubble Bobble fan, yes.
I I can't recreate it, but like in the back of my mind I can hear the music cuz it was one of those like earworm 8-bit tunes.
Bubble, 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 bop.
Mm-mm.
Yes, and it was on this game that I learned you can stand on bubbles and it's fine.
Facts.
Sure.
Absolute facts. Yep. All right, Rob, what else we got?
On June 19th, 1992, Treasure Co. Limited was founded in Tokyo, Japan by a group of former Konami developers who were eager to break away from sequels and create original, boundary pushing games. Frustrated with being assigned to licensed projects and follow ups, they formed Treasure with a bold vision to focus on unique gameplay ideas that prioritize creativity over commercial trends. That vision came to life with Gunstar Heroes, their explosive debut for the Sega Genesis in 1993, which blended fast paced run and gun action with colorful visuals and cooperative play. From there, Treasure built a cult following through its commitment to inventive mechanics and technical innovation, releasing acclaimed titles like Radiant's Silver Gun and Ikaruga, which pushed both hardware and player skills to their limits. We actually dove into the story behind Ikaruga in a previous episode, so if you want to find out more, go check it out.
Ironically enough, that was Orion episode 2.
My frothing demand for that podcast increases.
I did not intentionally do that, but I like the coincidence.
That just means that years ago we had Ryan on, and here he is years later, so he didn't get tired of us.
Ooh, years. Ouch. Okay, moving on.
Next, on June 20th, 1997, Final Fantasy Tactics was released in Japan for the PlayStation, marking a bold new direction for the iconic RPG franchise. Developed by Squaresoft, the game traded traditional turn based battles for deep, grid based tactical combat, introducing players to a layered system of job classes, positioning, and strategic planning. Set in the war torn kingdom of Ivalice, the story follows Ramza Beowulf, a noble born hero drawn into a web of political intrigue, betrayal, and religious conspiracy. Ooh.
Ooh.
With its mature narrative, Shakespearean tone, and rich customization, Final Fantasy Tactics earned critical acclaim and went on to become a cult classic. It also established Ivalice as a recurring setting in the series, laying the groundwork for future titles like Final Fantasy XII and Vagrant Story to explore its world in even greater depth. We briefly touched on this game when we learned about its creator, Yasumi Matsuno, who also created Vagrant Story, which we covered in episode 180.
With Adam.
With Adam. All the
They're
friends.
all the friend episodes we cover this one. Okay.
Mm-hmm. On June 2002, Neverwinter Nights was released for PC, marking a major milestone in the evolution of computer role playing games. Developed by BioWare and published by Atari, it brought the Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition rule set to life in a fully 3D world set within the Forgotten Realms. Players took on the role of a hero tasked with saving the city of Neverwinter, navigating a sprawling campaign filled with branching quests, rich lore, and classic D&D character progression. What truly set Neverwinter Nights apart, though, was its groundbreaking toolset that allowed players to build and host their own custom adventures online. This powerful suite of creation tools helped cultivate a thriving modding community, transforming the game into a platform for collaborative storytelling and user-driven content. Its legacy endures not just for its own narrative, but more for the countless stories it empowered others to tell.
Ryan, did you ever play that Neverwinter Nights?
No, I was only allowed to play Neverwinter Days. It was the less scary version.
It was only summer midday for me.
Okay, well, last one. Thank you.
Last up for this week, a game that, at least for myself and I think Dave, I don't know about Ryan, a game that really touched home. On June 21st, 2005, Battlefield 2 was released for PC, ushering in a new era for the series as it left behind the battlefields of World War II and entered the realm of modern warfare. Developed by DICE, this sequel expanded the franchise's signature large scale multiplayer experience, supporting up to 64 players on sprawling dynamic maps. It introduced key innovations like the commander role and squad based mechanics, encouraging strategic coordination and teamwork on an unprecedented scale. With a wide arsenal of modern vehicles, weapons, and factions, Battlefield 2 delivered a gritty, immersive take on 21st century combat. Praised for its depth, realism, and forward thinking design, it quickly became a landmark title in the evolution of online shooters. Now, 20 years later, its influence can still be felt in the genre it helped redefine.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You misspoke. It's not 20 years.
Sorry, guys. It is.
20 weeks, maybe.
No, 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 no. No, no.
Mine and Ryan's relationship was cultivated on the back of the Battlefield series.
Well, like 1942, I don't know how much you played 2. 2 is really where I got into
I
it,
know.
like heavy.
I know.
That's that game, man. Oh, the time I spent on there is sickening.
We didn't play a lot of 2, Ryan, did we?
My computer was primed for 1942, and it couldn't quite hang with Battlefield 2. I think that was the
The
problem.
catch. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean we did. We played the heck out of 1942 and Vietnam, but we all kind of fell off in this Battlefield 2 era. But that was also a few years into college for us, and we all had kind of gotten our own places and had our own jobs, and we didn't play as much at that point. So
Ugh, boring.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I was, still in middle school, 10 years old, just shooting people, having fun.
That also reminds me, Ryan, that we have known each other over 20 years now.
Yeah, 20 weeks. It's been crazy.
Crazy 20 weeks. Love it. I'm
Still
here for
friends.
it.
Still friends. Yep.
Still got it. Still can tolerate you after 20 weeks.
All right, guys. I don't think people are here to listen to you two reminisce about your 2 decades
Yes,
together.
they are.
So,
Listen, back in the day, if you wanted to play a game, you had to, download the cracked ROMs uphill both ways.
Yeah.
on that note, I think something important happened in 1994. So, Dave, why don't you tell the listeners about it? And I don't mean that it was while mom was pregnant with me and I was soon to be.
No, that is not what I was interested in when I wrote this. I forgot that, to be honest with you. Sorry.
Damn.
But what did happen in 1994 was that Katsura Hashino began what would become a long and influential career with Atlus, starting out on the game design team for Shin Megami Tensei If, a pivotal entry in the series that marked a very significant tone shift for the franchise. Now, if you don't remember If, we covered it back in episode 212 when we explored the origins of the Persona series. If was notable not only for its modern day high school setting, which broke away from the like apocalyptic themes of earlier entries, but it also was known for introducing the concept of psychological and philosophical storyteller that would define later spin-offs, including the Persona series. And it was received so well, Shin Megami Tensei If, by both critics and fans, that Atlus made that decision to explore more spin offs with similar concepts. And Revelations Persona was kind of the first of that initiative. And again, if you want to learn more about that, episode 212. But Persona wasn't the only child, really, that was born from If's success. There were several key Atlus developers, Hashino included, that were shuffled between various projects during this time, often contributing to multiple games simultaneously. Hashino served as game designer and later as producer on the PlayStation Portable port of one of the others, which is Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner. Now, his involvement with the Devil Summoner series didn't end there. He also took up game design duties on its sequel, Devil Summoner Soul Hackers, which is a cult classic now that blends cyberpunk elements with supernatural detective work. And then in 1999, Hashino stepped into the director's chair for the first time on Maken X, which is a unique first person hack and slash game that they released for the Sega Dreamcast. And he wasn't alone. He worked under veteran producer Koji Okada, who pretty much is the co-creator of both Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. So Maken X under Okada and Hashino, it was a unique title. It was a special title. It was a milestone title. It was one of Atlus's earliest full 3D titles, and it was Atlus's first game to ever feature complete voice acting from end to end, which was really no small feat in 1999. And just a side note, the premise of Maken X is just as wild as some of these milestones. Players controlled a sentient sword capable of quote unquote brain jacking its victims and assumed control of their bodies.
That sounds hot.
It was a solid seller, for a new intellectual property for the studio. And they would that same team would stick around and rework it into like an enhanced version called Maken Shao Demon Sword, which came out for the PS2 in 2001. And that would include third person gameplay and character redesigns that kind of helped it appeal to a different audience, a broader audience, in fact. And now with all of that, Hashino has worked on all these games. He's got these games under his belt, working on action games, working on these narrative heavy games. He was then asked to rejoin the mainline Shin Megami Tensei series. And so when it came time to make the next game in the series, the third game in the series, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, Hashino became its director. Now, Nocturne is a moody, a challenging title that kind of redefined the series for the current generation of consoles, not our current at the time. That game introduced the press turn mechanic, the battle system that kind of press to play has been found in countless RPGs afterwards. It really also marked a departure from Shin Megami Tensei before. It had more abstract philosophical themes. It had a different visual design. It was really different. So he directs Nocturne, and then after Nocturne, he's asked to work on yet another spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei series, directing both games in the Digital Devil Saga series. There are two of them. They are titles that kind of embrace more of a character driven storytelling medium within the Megami Tensei universe. And they kind of go from the supernatural from before into more of like a identity, evolution, transhumanism type theme. So he's really all over the place, right? Doing all these action games, doing all these narrative heavy dream games, doing all these moody. I mean, let's be honest, they're all really moody games. Have either of you played anything in the Megami Tensei series?
I've never played Megami Tensei.
No. Ryan, did you ever bump into that series at all growing up?
I cannot say that I did. I'm aware of it, but never kind of direct playing.
Gotcha. Nocturne would have been one of my earliest introductions to that series. I accidentally borrowed it from a friend and never returned it. I still have it. Sorry, friend. Um, I don't know. They're fantastic JRPGs, but we talked about that in that episode, and that's not why we're here today. So, somewhere in the mist of all this demon summoning, Hashino had another idea. It was one radically different from anything he'd done before. At some point, for reasons I couldn't genuinely find, he began conceptualizing a surgical simulation game. But every time he looked at it, the spark was there. But the problem he was having is that the hardware of the time just didn't support his vision. And so he shelved the idea more than once when he thought about it. And then someone brings the Nintendo DS prototype into Atlus and puts it into Hashino's hands. The moment he interacted with its dual screens and its stylus controls, he finally saw the potential for his idea to finally take shape. With the touchscreen interface, he realized that he could simulate the precision of surgical movements in a way that felt tactile and immersive. So, in summer of 2004, even as his team was wrapping up Digital Devil Saga, work began internally on what they originally called a super surgery game. I don't know why. I kind of wish they kept the name Super Surgery.
I mean, it
It's
is a pretty sick name.
it's cool, man. Super Surgery. I mean, it's funny. It it would not hit as well. Let's be honest, but it's funny because it's almost one of those English translations, which I'm sure that this interview translated it that way, and that's why I like it so much. So they knew from day one that this wasn't going to be an easy project, right? This team that had been together through the same team had stuck together through a lot of the games we already talked about. They were almost entirely Megami Tensei veterans. They were used to designing deep RPG mechanics and writing dark stories about demons and existential dread. They were not sitting there watching Grey's Anatomy,
Unfortunately so.
which was on at the time.
It was indeed on at the time. And to make things even more complicated, the Nintendo DS was brand new. They'd never developed for Nintendo hardware before. Everything about this project was outside of their comfort zone. So, I made the joke, but they did start with medical dramas. In their case, they quoted ER and Chicago Hope to get a feel for like the tone and the tension they were looking for. There were other medical simulators, surgical simulations, even on computers, on Windows PCs. So they began messing around with surgical sims. The writer, Shogo Isagai, who had been contributing to the narrative backbone of Atlus games since Shin Megami Tensei, was brought in to, again, pen the story. He had written, again, most of the games we talked about. And this was a new challenge for him because he knew virtually nothing about medicine. Same.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was developed back then. If they tried to look at a surgery simulator now, simulator games today are just weird.
That is a fact. Yes. Yeah, that is a fact. We have is Lily Surgery Simulator, the weird one that is a floppy hand one?
I
You know
think
what I'm
that's what it's
talking about?
called.
I
Or
think it's
Surgery Simulator VR or something like
yeah,
that.
well they make a VR and they make a non-VR version.
Oh,
So
okay. I've only ever seen a VR, so I didn't know that.
his early drafts, Isagai's, were focused on treating the medical profession with respect, but he soon realized that writing a grounded medical drama that was realistic was just beyond his expertise. Thankfully, the team, the producers, decided to inject science fiction into the story, and that gave him the opportunity to shift into more comfortable territory, right? That pivot introduced the plotline, the mysterious guilt virus, which was an engineered pathogen that acted more like a supervillain than a disease. And that allowed him to write a scenario that had more fantastical and stylized surgical scenarios, right? From the design standpoint, progress was rocky. They're writing and watching medical dramas and doing all this stuff, but the team, the programming team, the game design team, they're really struggling to figure out how to make this work. They toyed with different camera angles, probably top down, side views, but they really couldn't get it right. And it wasn't until they landed on what's now the gameplay, the first person perspective, that the gameplay finally clicked for the team. And now suddenly their viewpoint changed because players were no longer controlling a surgeon, they became the surgeon. Now, originally, the visuals also were meant to be hyper realistic, but Hashino vetoed this direction. He was worried that a realistic depiction of surgery, cutting skin, clamping arteries, and so on and so forth, might be off putting to characters, or to players rather, might be off putting to players. So instead, they chose an anime inspired aesthetic that they felt struck a balance. It was serious enough to treat the subject with gravity, but stylized enough to remain approachable. It was somewhere in the middle between real and cartoon, you know? Even the soundtrack on the game is a product of Atlus's RPG legacy. Composers Shoji Meguro and Kenichi Tsuchiya, did I get that right?
Close enough.
Okay, cool. Both of whom had contributed to Persona and Devil Summoner, brought their signature blend of moody electronica and ambient tension to the operating room. And their work helped elevate the tone, reinforcing the idea that the narrative staff had, which was that Trauma Center was not just a game, it was a dramatic experience.
The
That's a
music,
that's a fact, isn't it?
the music is
Dramatic
so
or
good.
traumatic?
All right, it's dramatic and traumatic at the same time. Ryan, what about the music?
It's just it's so good.
I know.
You can put it on in the background, and I'm just gonna start getting stuff done. It's just really good music.
So, real quick, before we kind of move on to the rest of the titles in the series, did y'all know that Trauma Center was made by the Atlus team? Like, I know you knew it was Atlus, but did you know that it was the Megami Tensei team?
Well, I didn't even know what that was, so I can't say I did.
It's impressive to kind of just do a hard left in terms of genres. I wouldn't have guessed that outside of it just being known as being made within Atlas. Um,
Does it make more sense once you know that? Because it is very dramatic, like a role playing game. Like, all of the Megami Tensei series is wildly dramatic. And it was really interesting to me. Like, something clicked for me when I came to realize, when I got to the point where I was like, it's the same team. I was like, that makes a lot of sense because it is over the top. It's an over the top surgery simulator, but in the best kind of way, right?
yeah, you don't want the game to be too sterile.
Right.
God damn it.
or, or or on the opposite end, since we were talking about surgery simulator, which is just a goofy alternative. um i I found that incredibly fascinating, um that this was made by a group of RPG veterans that were accustomed to demons, dungeons, and destiny, and that they somehow pulled off a wildly different kind of adventure. Uh, the end result, as we all know why we're here today, Trauma Center Under the Knife, which was released on June 16th, 2005. It is equal parts visual novel and surgical puzzle game, and it really carved out this little niche, and it really carved out this little niche all on its own, and became one of the more standout titles on the Nintendo DS, like the early standout titles.
Now, Dave,
Yeah.
I haven't heard you talk about the influence that the game Operation played in its development.
I I cannot find any factual proof that Operation played, but it's hard to believe that it didn't, right?
So you're saying there's a chance.
There's I think every surgical anything on the face of the earth takes inspiration from Operation. Even medical, even doctors, like real surgeons.
Grey's
There's
Anatomy. Absolutely.
that's that's exactly right. That is literally part of Grey's Anatomy. Do you remember when this came out? Like how unusually popular it was? Or was it just us? Like, are we just weird and into niche topics? And so, like, we were excited for it.
Well, certainly both can be true, Dave.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's fair.
that's true. I just felt like when this came out, everybody was looking for it.
It was something new. The DS had a lot of some chill games like Brain Age and Nintendogs, and then here you've got Trauma Center with you're doing surgery with some bioweapons thrown in for good mix.
Absolutely.
It was. It did throw a loop.
The
It did.
touchscreens were very novel at the time.
Well, yeah, it was brand new. It was we were itching for any excuse to use that new control scheme, right? Like everything was cool at this point. Uh, Everything was different. Everything was cool. Like that was still a unique novelty to all of us. So
It's hard to believe this predates the modern era of the smartphone, right?
it
And
does.
touchscreens had to use the stylus as opposed to the capacitive touch that we're used to nowadays.
Yeah, true statement. Yeah, the DS was so cool. I still have my first one. It was so cool. Oh man. Well, Trauma Center Under the Knife is proof that creative risk, even from the unlikeliest of places, can yield something truly original. So just like that, an entire team known for demons, dark storylines, post-apocalyptic RPGs pivoted into making a surgical simulator with sci-fi flair, and the result was Trauma Center Under the Knife, a totally unique experience that no one saw coming, not even the team themselves at first.
Honestly, Dave, that kind of creative pivot sounds a lot like starting a podcast.
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, it's really all about trying something new, even if it's outside your comfort zone. And for anyone out there thinking about sharing their own voice, ideas, or expertise, our friends at Zencaster have got you covered.
Zencaster's all in one platform makes podcasting as easy as tapping a touchscreen. You can record in crystal clear 4K video and
Studio.
studio quality audio, all from your browser. No complicated tech or obscure RPG knowledge required.
And once you're done recording, Zencaster's built in post production tools help smooth everything out. They remove background noise, balance your audio, and trim all the uhs and ums so your episodes sound professional right out of the gate.
Plus, publishing your podcast is a breeze. With a few clicks, your episode can be sent out to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the other major platforms.
So if you've been waiting for the right time to start your podcasting journey, now's your moment. Head over to zencaster.com/pricing and use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane, and you can get 30% off the first month of any one of Zencaster's paid plans.
Don't wait for a touchscreen revolution to chase your idea. Start now with Zencaster.
Whether you're cutting into aliens or cutting your first episode, Zencaster gives you the tools to operate with confidence. Y'all ready to get back into the tale?
And you don't even need to be a brain surgeon.
Well, on that note, we're definitely ready to get back into the tale. All right, so before I jump into the rest of it, I will ask, did either of you play any of the other games in the series? Rob?
I did not. Under the Knife is where I did. I played that game, got all the way to the final boss, and could never beat it. And yes, I know the trick was using the second star thing to slow it down even more when you weren't supposed to. I still couldn't beat it, and then Dave took his DS back.
True statement. How about you, Ryan? Did you play any of the others?
No, I only played the first one. As I had previously mentioned, I did go into medical school. Uh, However, I quickly washed out because I tried to use healing touch IRL. Turns out that just gets you fired.
Okay.
That's fair.
I also did not play any others in the series, so apparently nobody played any of the others in the series.
Damn.
Riding the success of Under the Knife, producer Katsura Hashino wanted to keep the momentum going. So he tapped a few key developers from the original team and asked them to form a new internal group to carry the franchise forward. And they would become known as the Caduce team. Isn't that what the Caduce was, the medical doctors in the first one? I think it is what it was, if I remember the narrative right.
The caboose is the last train.
Okay, Caduce, Duce.
You said deuce.
Excuse you.
Okay. This team was made up of some of the more enthusiastic gamers at Atlus. Now, as you know, he wasn't the director was Daisuke Kanata. Who wasn't new to the world of Atlus. He had also worked on several Megami Tensei titles and had worked alongside Hashino since the Makin X days. So, you know, Hashino went from being the director on Trauma Center, Under the Knife, to producer, and he brought in Kanata to push the series forward. Trauma Center Second Opinion is Kanata's debut as a game director. Now, pretty much he co-directs alongside a guy named Hiroshi Kato. Programming's led by Takada Ikada, and these are all fixtures for the rest of the series. So I'm going to get their names out of the way. The lead designer was Masayoshi Sudo, who later goes on to become the art director of Persona 5. So this is a very talented group of people that are going to continue the Trauma Center series that none of us played.
Are these the same people behind Kung Fu Panda?
Maybe. Yeah, we should check that out. So, again, this is a team full of RPG veterans that are trying something completely different. They start development on Trauma Center Second Opinion in January of 2006. And, the stakes were kind of high because it wasn't just a sequel. This was going to be one of the early titles for Nintendo's new console, which was the Wii. And so the Wii, as we know, has unique motion controls, which the team kind of wanted to use to offer new gameplay opportunities, but it wasn't a stylus, so it kind of comes with a steep learning curve, right? And Second Opinion is a remake of the original because the team knew that they couldn't just port the original DS game. In order to get it to the Wii, they had to rebuild everything from scratch. So they couldn't use any of the original source code. Every tool, every system, every operation had to be reimagined to fit the Wiimote and nunchuck control scheme. And so they had to change the feel of things. Iconic instruments like the forceps were redesigned to feel natural with the new motion controls. Some new tools were introduced to fill gaps, like the defibrillator was introduced, and even the art got a complete overhaul. Like I said, they brought in a new lead designer. They redrew all the characters. When they brought it over to the Wii, they kind of matured the design of the game slightly. The internal anatomy was reshaped to look more realistic, but they stayed with that stylized theme, so they weren't too graphic or off-putting to people. They didn't want it to be a gore fest. They wanted the game to be focused on intensity and urgency, not shock value, so to speak.
Pretty much the polar opposite from the Manhunt 2 on Wii, going for all shock, all awe, all gore.
That is a fact. Good pull on the Manhunt reference. My God. Behind the scenes of Second Opinion, it wasn't all smooth sailing. The game was developed in a very short time frame that put considerable pressure on the team. Atlus USA itself was brought in to offer suggestions on the control scheme, and that kind of helped refine the game for an international audience. Now, there were some big changes. One of the key changes was the addition of multiple difficulty settings. Fans had kind of requested that after Under the Knife because sometimes it was incredibly difficult, as Rob said. really hard last boss.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps the biggest addition to Second Opinion wasn't mechanical, it was narrative. The team needed to find a way to make this new version stand apart from the DS original, and so they came up with the idea of a second playable character. It's another surgeon whose storyline runs parallel to the original protagonist, who is Derek Stiles. And at first, the team kind of toyed with the idea of a darker version of Styles, an alternate character clad in black, but that concept overlapped too much with some of the supporting characters from the first game. So they reworked the idea entirely and kind of developed a new character that was going to offer a different philosophical lens, who would be a surgeon that's exiled from the medical profession, someone whose motivations were more pragmatic and business-like than Styles, but would share the same underlying desire to save lives. And that, if you played the game, became Naomi Kimishima. Naomi brings a more ambiguous energy to the story. She's cynical, she's serious, and she's deeply haunted by her past. And her presence gives Second Opinion a more nuanced emotional tone. So, Second Opinion has more voice acting than the original, about 10 times more voice clips. It's not fully voiced, though. And so, for the first time included in this, they give Derek Stiles a voice of his own. All in all, Second Opinion is more than just a port. Like I said, it's really a definitive version of Under the Knife. It's enhanced in nearly every way, and it's completely redesigned to take advantage of the Wii's unique capabilities. And it sold well. It launched as a Wii title in late 2006, and although it didn't top the sales charts like the first one, it really quickly earned a dedicated following. It showed that the concept of high stakes surgery could evolve with the hardware, and that there was still potential for more growth in the franchise, right? I know. Lovely. So Second Opinion is in players' hands, and it's selling well. So the Trauma Center team thinks, okay, cool, money. So they go to make a new one, right? Because money.
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 You gotta love it.
Most of the team stays together. Kanata stays in the director's chair. Writer Shogo Isagai came back to write the story. Character design guy stayed the same. And so now we have Trauma Center New Blood. And New Blood isn't just about refining the gameplay, it expands the narrative of the Trauma Center universe. Rather than continue the story of Derek Stiles and Naomi, the team decides to go with a fresh cast and a brand new storyline, hence the name New Blood. And really, they also wanted to do that so that New Blood could serve as a jump on point for new players who didn't need any knowledge of the previous titles, while also giving longtime fans more of what they love, right?
And an infusion of new experiences.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Now, the story of New Blood centers around a new medical team and a new threat, but thematically it carries the same values: the fight to preserve life and the moral weight of holding someone's fate in your hands. But most importantly, it introduces another key innovation: multiplayer co op, which I didn't know existed in the series, and I think that's really cool.
That is pretty cool. I didn't know either.
This idea came from the programmer Aikita, who, after hearing feedback from players who wish they could operate together, whipped up a working prototype of co op gameplay in like a few days. So it gets put in the hands of the director, Kanata. It's tested, it's approved, and they greenlight it to become a full part of the game. So now players could team up and perform operations side by side, each wielding the Wii remote like a surgical partner, which again sounds really cool.
I'll be honest, that's actually how I got kicked out of medical school. Multiplayer surgery. Frowned upon, turns out.
Well, I'm glad we got to the bottom of your origin story. And once again, Atlus has taken a creative risk that pays off. New Blood releases in November 2007. It sells pretty well, and it proves the Trauma Center isn't just like a quirky one off, two off, three off. It's really a franchise that has staying power, right? So, New Blood forges the series ahead on the Wii with a fresh cast and co op gameplay, while that's going on, there's really still a segment of the fan base who misses the simplicity and storytelling of the original Under the Night of Knife on the DS. And so Atlus is hearing them clamor for more content. And they realize that not everyone's made the jump to the Wii. And for those players, there's still more of Derek's style story to tell. So the team gets to work and they develop Trauma Center Under the Knife 2. And that's a true sequel to the first game that is built specifically for the DS. And it's designed specifically, literally, to continue the story and gameplay style of the original game. Whereas New Blood and Second Opinion kind of pushed the franchise forward with, motion controls and new characters and the co-op surgery, Under the Knife 2 brings everything back to where it started. Just basic touchscreen surgeries, simple stylus-based gameplay, and the high-stakes drama of Dr. Styles' return. Now, that game launches in North America on July 1st, 2008. It actually predates the Japanese release by over a month. It's pretty rare for games made by this company to be released in North America first. That's why I recognized it. And so by 2009, Atlus has taken the Trauma Center series across 2 consoles, 4 titles, and a range of surgical scenarios, right? But the developers aren't satisfied with just refining the same formula. They want to push boundaries. They want to create a game that wasn't just about surgery, but about the entire world of modern medicine. The team recognizes that players are really starting to feel surgery fatigue. So they went broad. They went really broad. Trauma Team, the last game in the series, incorporates surgery, emergency medicine, endoscopy, diagnosis, orthopedics, and even forensic pathology. Each of those features its own protagonists, its own unique mechanics, and it each has its own narrative arc. And the idea when they designed this game was to show different angles of the medical world. From the adrenaline of the ER to the analytical rigor of crime scene investigations on the forensic pathology side. With that, they kind of nixed the sci-fi elements of the previous entries. So, the healing touch and all the other supernatural flourishes were dropped in the favor of realism, which they didn't want to do in the beginning.
Right.
Even the really rigid fail conditions from the earlier games were reevaluated. Trauma Team is designed to be more intuitive, more forgiving, and more accessible. So they're writing the story about medicine across the board and how medicine affects everybody and really trying to bring it all together. And then in the middle of development, the 2009 swine flu pandemic hit. So Kobayashi revises large parts of the story to reflect a new global anxiety. He focuses not just on medicine, but on how people live in the shadow of widespread disease. And that becomes the narrative arc, through which the entire game progresses.
Foreshadowing.
Right. The final product is Trauma Team is a vibrant, ambitious, genre-spanning medical drama. It has over 15,000 voice lines, which is more than most of the RPGs at the same time. It's pretty impressive that each profession has its own gameplay, each character has its own arc, and that players could just kind of switch between them at will. I didn't know this game existed, frankly.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I think it's fascinating that there's a game in this series that is not just surgery, that's like a whole medical drama from top to bottom. So, Trauma Team was a reinvention of the franchise. It was aimed not just at longtime fans, but anyone interested in compelling character-driven storytelling. And with that, Atlus had taken this little niche surgical simulator and turned it into one of the most experimental and emotionally resonant games in their catalog. Unfortunately, Trauma Team would also be the last entry in the franchise, and there hasn't been any rumblings to a new one. So I mean, who knows if we're going to see any future entries.
I'm hopeful that there will be, maybe it can be, as is popular these days, kind of a legacy sequel featuring Derek's daughter, Julia Stiles.
Oh my god. How long did you have that queued up?
I've been trying to figure out how to fit that in basically the whole episode.
Ever since the first time I said Derek Styles' name. Hmm?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
My,
yeah,
oh,
yeah. Yeah.
Any
Okay.
relation to Harry?
oh.
Oh. Oh.
Save that for the third
Yeah.
gen.
I don't know about you, but like the thought of trauma team that I again didn't even know existed is really fascinating. I, I think it's cool that it expanded into like the medical profession, more of the medical profession, I guess.
I mean, really, if you think about it, there's opportunities for all kinds of different kind of, I don't know if you can do a whole game on them, but mini games, right? You've got the guy in the hospital who just like shuttles patients between their rooms and in the operation centers. You could have a game like that. It's not too unlike like Overcooked, right? Or you know, like you've got Football Manager. Well, why not Hospital Manager? That's got to be a stressful game.
What about uh insurance claim manager?
Oh God.
That would be benefit claim manager. Isn't that a real job? Navigate the the dramatic hallways of the medical insurance profession.
Okay, hospital insurance simulator. Make it like totally accurate battle simulator, or goat simulator. You can have some fun with it.
You could really have fun with it. That is a fact. That is absolutely a fact. I like your idea. I'm going to put that down in the idea book.
We're doing Atlas's work for him here.
We are. Yeah. I don't know if they need our help.
Let's cut this from the episode.
Let's not. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, that, my friends, is the Trauma Center series. We all played the first one, we loved it, and then for whatever reason, we never touched it ever again. Accurate?
Accurate.
I think so. And if we could just take 1 minute to think of to thank all of our first responder heroes. Are we not doing that anymore?
We are. I just didn't know there would be clapping. Of, of course, we're going to thank our first responders. They're amazing people.
Heroes.
They're heroes. The heroes among us. Absolutely. The work that they do every day is literally life saving.
Life saving. Can't do it without them.
They should be commended.
Agreed.
Unfortunately, people suck and don't give credit where credit's due ever. But, that's neither here nor there. All right, well, that is the story of Trauma Center. It was developed by a very veteran RPG team that created a lot of games and other series, such as Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. We have done episodes on Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. So if you'd like to learn more about the early games that this team worked on, or either of those games, which are incredibly fascinating, you can check out our old episodes by going to our website, which is www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can people do on our website?
You can find a calendar of our future episode topics, get an idea of what we're going to be talking about in upcoming episodes. You can find a link to our Discord where you can come hang out with the guests of our episodes and maybe chat games with us, or maybe it's just us all talking to each other. You'll never know unless you join. You can join our Patreon where you can help support us and get access to ad-free and the unedited versions of these episodes, which sometimes there's some fun little banter behind the scenes that you don't get to hear. And you can find links to our social media where I am on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor and Dave.
I am on various platforms as David is wrong, and history tells us that Ryan is not on social media.
You'll never find me. Unless you have a very particular set of skills.
That's called my cell phone and your phone number. Each week, we'll tell you one story relevant to the current week in gaming history. This week, that was the story of the Trauma Center series. Yay!
Yay!
Yeah, I don't know where I was going with there. No, I'm just kidding. Why did I stop there? I don't know. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Okay, cool. Every week, when we sit down to research a new topic, I learn new things. I get excited when I learn new things. I get excited because when I learn new things, I get to teach other people new things that I'm pretty sure they didn't know. Because that's I'm always assuming nobody knows anything. So here we are. And in celebration of that cycle of teaching and learning, learning and teaching, we like to go roundtable and talk about our takeaways. So I'm gonna start with you, Ryan. What did you learn today?
Well, I did not know that, you know, about the game Trauma Team at all, or at least I didn't know that it was related to the Trauma Center series as well. Uh, and it's still hoping for that legacy sequel.
Julia Stiles.
I would accept Ryan Stiles for a prequel.
Oh, you were waiting for that one. Okay, fair enough. Rob, what did you learn today?
Well, I learned that there's a correlation between Shin Megami Tensei and Trauma Center, which is kind of weird.
Facts.
I never would have thought. I obviously surprised. Well, I can't say I don't know a lot of development studios or people that worked on games because obviously you see the credits at the end of every one. But having never beaten this game nor played Shin Megami, I just never would have guessed that the two are related in any way. It's kind of cool. It's interesting. Just
I
shows the variety of ideas that people can have.
I agree. And I'm a piggyback off of that because that was my revelation too, as I already talked about. When you look at it in the context of how dramatic the Shin Megami series is, and then you go and you look at how dramatic Trauma Center is, it really makes a lot of sense because that's what these guys know is drama, and they brought their own unique brand of drama to a surgical simulator, which I think is pretty freaking cool, actually. I mean, let's be honest, we all enjoyed playing the first game in the series, so. But yeah, that's Trauma Center. That's Trauma Center. Let's not beat a dead horse.
Yeah,
It's gonna need surgery anyway, so.
it's the only surgery game I've played where I had to pause to clean my screen and ended up losing the patient.
That's good. That's real good. Uh,
The remote surging having a heart attack.
yep. That's that's good. All right. Well, Rob, before I take it out of here and into next week, is there anything you'd like to add to today's episode?
Well, I will take a quick moment to first thank Ryan for joining us tonight. It's always a pleasure. We enjoy having you along. We hope you had fun tonight.
Yes, it's been a while since I've been on, and hope to be on soon. Thank you.
Well, hopefully we will see you soon in an upcoming episode. And
Great.
then I will also take a moment to say thank you so much to all of our listeners. It means the world to us to have you along as we talk about hacking and slashing, and not always in the way of monsters, but sometimes in the meaning of people. So thank you.
Ryan, anything else you'd like to add to today's episode?
I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel for medical jokes here, so I'm gonna say, thanks for having me, and hopefully we'll see you soon, and hopefully no more medical malpractice.
Facts. All right. Next week, we are stepping away from the tense drama of Trauma Center Under the Knife and descending into the psychological horrors of Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem. Released in 2002 for the Nintendo GameCube, this haunting classic combines a chilling tale of cosmic horror with innovative sanity effects that blur the line between player and game. From ancient curses to fourth wall breaking twists, Eternal Darkness was as unsettling as it was groundbreaking. Join us as we unravel the mysteries and madness behind this legendary title on next week's unsettling trip down memory card lane to the
Trauma Center.
thing. Okay.